Should we give him a polite round of applause and say, welcome back, Mark Devlin?
Thank you. Yeah, part 2 is going to be a little shorter than part 1 because, we've got to be out here by 11, as we know, because COVID is very clever. 10:59, you're good. It will leave you alone, but it's there waiting, 10:59, 11 o'clock, it's coming for you. That's why the masks are coming in on the 8th of August in museums and galleries and such. 7th of August, you're good, but it knows the date and it will be coming for you. So a change of tack in part 2, going in some different directions to part 1. And I'm going to be asking what has been going on under cover of the coronavirus smokescreen these past several months. So I'm not going to be addressing the George Floyd Black Lives Matter stunt because clearly that bears all the hallmarks of having been yet another false flag, socially engineered, put-up job, courtesy of the establishment to divert attention away temporarily from the coronavirus narrative. That's a whole different matter. I won't be going down that particular rabbit hole. But I'll be looking at events which have been less reported in the mainstream media, where you've had to search very hard to find evidence of them going on, and they've been pretty much covered up. So let's have a look at some of the other things that have been happening since March, while the vast overwhelming majority of people have been obsessing about COVID this, COVID that, COVID the other. And the news has been hammering us over the head with coronavirus and nothing else. Well, a good place to start would appear to be asking what the bloody hell is going on with the royal family, because there's been a few things. So very early on in this narrative, we were getting forewarned by the mainstream press that the public might not get to see the Queen out and about in public ever again. What a disaster. How will we cope? How will we know the difference? But we were getting conditioned to get used to this idea that the Queen might be gone. So what's going on there? I mean, the official account is that at 94 years of age, she's very much at risk of this beastly virus. And for her own protection, she needs to self-isolate and not be out and about mixing with everyone else. There did seem to be something of an exercise in damage limitation, though, round about April, when after the initial announcement that she might not be seen out and about again, and after tongues got wagging in the sort of truth alternative realm as to whether she's even around anymore, has she been arrested, has she died, has she been sent off somewhere, we got this image that was circulated around the press of what purports to be the Queen riding her horse at 94 years of age, like you do, in the grounds of Windsor Castle. This was in the midst of a heat wave that we were having in April. Beautiful, warm, sunny weather. And here's the Queen dressed up in what appears to be clothing for a much colder day. Is that the way you would dress up on a baking hot spring day? Of course, the implication here is that this could well have been an old picture which has been recirculated and put out there to placate the general public into believing that the Queen is alive and well and is still out there and is riding around on her horse. But then we got the story of Buckingham Palace apparently being shut down and going bankrupt. The Queen's down to her last trillion, evidently. So the headline asks, has the Queen left London forever? We hear all about the royal staff that have been offered voluntary redundancy, all these job losses coming out of Buckingham Palace as COVID takes its 18 million toll on her finances. Well, reportedly 18 million to the Queen is like, us dropping 50p out in the car park probably. But this is what we were getting later, and it seems to all be pointing towards getting people used to the idea that the Queen is finished, don't expect to see her out in public. She made those 2 public service announcements, of course, all those broadcasts early on in the coronavirus situation. That's pretty unprecedented. She normally just pops up at Christmas and you never hear from her again for the rest of the year. But she put out the first one where she was invoking something of a World War II spirit and quoting Vera Lynn, "We'll meet again, we'll be with friends and family again." And then we get the news of Vera Lynn passing away a few weeks after that. Lots of Second World War throwbacks and interesting symbolism going on there, but that's sort of by the by. We can then cross over to Prince Philip, and we're reminded of this very interesting quote that he made back in 1988, where he spoke of, "In the event that I'm reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation." So he appears to be of the same mindset as Bill Gates, Boris Johnson, David Attenborough, and all the rest of them, in that he feels there are too many people in the world and it's his duty, his responsibility to help contribute to its lowering. So very interesting that he makes this reference to a virus, and that's the dominant theme of what we've had this year. And we could well ask the question of what has happened to Prince Philip as well, because there's much speculation about the fact that he may well have died some time back, but we've not been told about it. They're delaying the announcement for an opportune moment. So then there appeared to be another exercise in damage limitation in the wake of this speculation, where this picture was released linked to what was said to be his 99th birthday just the other week. And we had this picture of, reportedly, the Queen and Prince Philip in front of Windsor Castle here. A few people who are into this sort of thing have told me that this is a photoshopped fake and that there's evidence of digital manipulation going on. These two have been superimposed against the backdrop of the castle here. So many different people have suggested that to me. So this would appear to be, once again, an effort to placate the general public into believing that it's business as usual, all is well and good, Philip's 99, and they're still alive and well. They just seem to go on forever. Okay, so we now move on to Prince Charles. I won't make any comment about this at this juncture. I'll just play this video to you, see what you make of it, and we talk about it afterwards.
Can't tell you how much I sympathise with the way everybody has had to endure this unbelievably testing and challenging time. And I know that so many people have had the agony of losing, their loved ones, and the bewilderment and anxiety.
Okay, anyone notice anything a bit strange about that video?
That's 2 up, 2 down.
Okay.
That's not a panic.
Well, there is that, but there's also the fact that that ain't Prince Charles. It's not him. Sky News wheeled out a Prince Charles impersonator, and they had the barefaced nerve to present it as Prince Charles when it quite clearly isn't. I mean, where's his bloody bald patch for a start? And once again, it's reinforcing the idea that, if Prince Charles can self-isolate and do interviews via Zoom, then you bloody well can as well. But here's a compare and contrast. There's the real Prince Charles. There's the double. When you place them side by side, you can see the obvious differences. Did they really think that people wouldn't notice? I don't know how they got away with that one, but this character has been wheeled out for other interviews as well. You can find footage of him on other news broadcasts. So why would they feel the need to give us a Prince Charles double, a Prince Charles imposter? Where's the real one? Why can't he be doing these interviews? Strange stuff going on with the royals. You may have heard about this. Apparently, the royal crest, the royal seal, has disappeared from the gates at the front of Buckingham Palace. And this would appear to have been the case since October of 2019. That's when that was first noticed to have been removed. This all ties in with the claims of this guy. Again, most people in the room are probably familiar with Joseph Gregory Hallett, known as Greg Hallett, a New Zealander who for many years has made the claim that he is the rightful monarch of England, that the royal bloodline was usurped back in about 1860, the 1860s, during the time of Queen Victoria, and that every royal so-called since has been illegitimately put in there because the bloodline got steered off in a different direction. So he claims that he is the rightful heir to the throne and the current monarch, and he's known as King John III of England. Lots of mixed thoughts about his claims. He's been making them for some time. Very difficult to verify any of what he says by way of documentary evidence and proofs and such. He has presented a whole load of documentation. As far as I can see, it's very difficult to get your head around. It's very clear, very ambiguous. And we're left wondering whether there's any legitimacy to what he's claiming. But his claim is that the royal crest disappearing off the gates of Buckingham Palace is directly linked to the fact that the Queen has ceded her authority over to him, and she's now effectively gone off into exile, which is why we're not seeing her anymore and why we're being forewarned not to expect her to be out in public. I'm sure everyone has a viewpoint on this. I guess I'll just leave it there. Then we have Andrew, of course. And his name came up again when all the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell debacle made the news again just recently. And I bet he's learnt to sweat now. I bet he's found that ability. So Prince Andrew was obviously in some deep water before this coronavirus situation broke. He did that TV interview last year, which I would suggest did far more damage than it did good in terms of his reputation. And now we hear that it's very far from over, and the US courts want him out there to testify in the Jeffrey Epstein case, particularly given the recent news of the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell. Who knows what that's going to lead to in terms of her spilling the beans and implicating various other people. But all of this stuff has been going on while everybody else has been obsessing about masks and social distancing and standing behind bits of tape at the supermarket. Very interesting. This reportedly is from one of the unsealed Maxwell documents tied into that case, and it involves Bill Clinton. And this document claims that Clinton was at Epstein's Island with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and 2 young girls. And that will just be the tip of the iceberg from what I hear about what is yet still to come out of that whole thing. And of course, we can't avoid talking about the Q plan. And it's been my experience that this subject actually is more divisive than flat Earth. You might have thought it would be impossible to find a subject which pits friend against friend, brother against brother, more so than flat Earth, but I'm certainly finding this is the case with Q. And from all the people that I speak to, it really does seem to be quite an even split between those who are calling the entire QAnon situation out as a psyop, to disempower people, to give them false hope, to lead them off down the garden path. And those who will say there is absolute validity to it. There is indeed a group working behind the scenes in conjunction with Donald Trump to bring down the deep state cabal and to hold to account paedophiles, child traffickers, and various other criminals. My perspective on it is that I've been very much on the fence for quite a few weeks now, since I first started taking a serious look at all this information. There are some times where I veer more towards it being a psyop and I start to lose faith in the whole thing. There are certain days where I see some information, some evidence which kind of nudges me in the other direction. I'm still very much divided on it. I do think we've seen a few things happening which are consistent with the idea that this plan is real, and we can look at some of them. So, according to many commenters on the Q situation, it's very much tied in with the Kennedy dynasty, the Kennedy political family, going all the way back to JFK Sr. His assassination in 1963 is when, according to many, the Q plan initially started to be hatched. And this is an aerial view of the burial site of John F. Kennedy Sr., which we can see appears somewhat in the form of a Q. And this is an indication to some that the Kennedy family are tied in with the whole Q plan. Many, as you might be aware, are of the view that John F. Kennedy Jr., who is said to have died in a plane crash in July of 1999, never actually died, and his death was faked, and he's been working underground for the past 21 years, piecing together this plan, ready for it all to come to fruition very soon, we're told. There have been various indicators from Donald Trump's behaviours and activities this year and going back to 2019, which a lot of people have attributed to being connected with this so-called Q plan. One of them was when he visited the Queen in London at Buckingham Palace, and they're inspecting the guards that are all lined up there, and Donald Trump supposedly broke protocol by walking in front of the Queen. And the press made a lot of this at the time. They were saying, what an oaf, what a buffoon, how uncouth. He didn't observe the correct protocol. You don't walk in front of the Queen. Everyone knows you're supposed to walk behind her. And this is the way that Trump has been framed by the mainstream media pretty much from the start of his presidency. He's been lampooned, he's been ridiculed, he's been demonized, he's been painted as this bumbling buffoon, this oaf. And I do find that quite interesting. I think it tells us something, because that was never the case with George W. Bush. George W. Bush pretty much got good press. He was never demonized and lambasted in the way Trump was, despite the fact that he was a complete village idiot who could barely tie his shoelaces together. And he was also a psychopath. But these aspects seem to have gone unreported by the mainstream press, whereas Trump is copping a whole load of flack for anything that he does. And I think when the media is all united in that kind of stance when it comes to somebody in his position, it can tell us something. And possibly it can indicate that somebody is working to a very large extent as a kind of maverick on their own terms outside of the remit of the control system. All kinds of other visits that Trump has made, including this link up with the Pope here, Trump looking very satisfied and pleased with himself at the outcome of the meeting, the Pope looking anything but, and like there are so many other places he'd rather be. Then, during the midst of all this virus madness, we got the news, but not through the mainstream media. So you had to hunt very hard for this one. This got reported in certain aspects of the alternative media. Little whisperings of it kind of filtered through, but it's not something that the BBC or CNN would have told you about. And that was when Trump brought the Federal Reserve Bank under the remit of the US government by effectively merging it with the US Treasury. This is really big news because the Federal Reserve since 1913 has been a cartel of private bankers which has operated through usury, and it's used the taxpayers of the world as collateral damage against money which is loaned to governments at interest, and the Federal Reserve has had the governments of the world, the government of the United States, by the balls. So this is a break with a long tradition in terms of the Federal Reserve being brought under the remit of the US government for the first time. Big news. You'd think the mainstream media would be all over it, but they weren't. So we can ask ourselves why that is. We also have reports of Obamagate, which is an investigation into the political machinations and improprieties of Barack Obama and his whole administration, and the role that they're said to have played in trying to sabotage the 2016 election and see to it that Hillary Clinton got in rather than Trump. And we've not heard the last of this. The trials and the ramifications from it are ongoing, and Obamagate has become a very real thing. I bet Barack Obama has learnt to sweat as well as Prince Andrew in recent times. Sorry. The next piece is a video, and I've put it in here to give us a little indication of what Donald Trump thinks about the coronavirus and how seriously he's taking the whole thing. So when you watch this, do you see a president who is gravely concerned with a deadly pandemic which is sweeping the country and is posing a threat to humanity as we know it? Or do you see someone who is quite frankly, taking the piss out of the whole situation. He's here with Attorney General Bill Barr. There's a guy laughing over the top of it because that's the only version of the video I could get, so please excuse that. But watch for Trump and Bill Barr's facial expressions towards the end of this.
Negatives or false positives.
I have a question for you. So we have a lot of very angry media all around this room, and they want one of these seats. But because of social distancing, we are keeping them empty, and they are keeping them empty. Will there ever be a time when all of those really angry people who don't like me much to start off with, but now they really don't like me, will there ever be a time when these seats are full, like full to the brim like it used to be, where people are almost sitting on each other's lap, and this whole row over here is packed, and now they're outside wanting to get in, and they're very jealous of all of these reporters. Will we ever have that again, or is that something that will be, you know, it'll look like this forever?
So we're learning a lot about social distancing and respiratory diseases, and I think those are the discussions we have to have in the future. Is what you were talking about,
Mr. President.
So from there, I think we can see how seriously Trump is taking the whole thing. So, you know, he's either a very good actor playing a role, and he is indeed just another expression of the deep state cabal, and he's hoodwinking us all, and the Q plan is just a massive psyop, as many claim it is, or he is a maverick who is, you know, kind of going off script a little bit. But the purpose of this part of the presentation is to ask the question, you know, what has been going on outside of the coronavirus that people have not been paying attention to because they've been obsessed with virus this, virus that. And I learned a long time ago when I got into truth research that when the media wants you looking in a certain direction, and when all they're hammering is one story, one narrative, day after day, week after week, it becomes a very interesting exercise to ask yourself, what do they not want us looking at? What's going on over here when everybody else is looking over here? And the past several weeks has given us no shortage of other things over here to pay attention to if we choose to extricate ourselves from the obsession with the virus. We can get a little indication as to how seriously Anthony Fauci is taking the wearing of face masks as well, despite the fact that he's come out there saying it's vital that Americans wear face masks to prevent the spread of the virus. Here he is indicating what he thinks of it in his own behaviours. Same thing with Matt Hancock, less of the Han. This is what he thinks of his own social distancing rules. This is how seriously he takes it. Now, if Matt Hancock really believed that getting too close to someone, shaking hands, giving them a hug, patting them on the back, was seriously putting people's health at risk and could be helping to spread this deadly virus that could attack anyone, Boris Johnson, Tom Hanks, anyone, do you think he would be behaving in this way? He's caught on camera here in Parliament, patting a colleague on the back. There have been other instances of this as well. Or is it more likely that he knows the whole thing is just bollocks? Same way Donald Trump knows, same way Bill Barr knows, same way Dr. Anthony Fauci knows. They know it's all bollocks. And
Evil piece of shit, man.
he really is. This guy is particularly, I find him particularly vindictive and mendacious and a really nasty piece of work. You know, even more so than Boris Johnson. This guy, you know, there was a Twitter trend which broke last week, and the tagline was, Matt Hancock must go, but they missed out the words, to jail for treason. So here we have a tweet from Angela Stanton King, US House candidate, and she dropped this truth bomb saying this isn't about COVID-19 or Black Lives Matter. This is a major cover-up for pedophilia and human trafficking. I wish people cared more about who's trafficking children than who's wearing a mask. So I think we're getting down to what this virus narrative is really covering up here, which is the problem of worldwide, systematic, institutionalized pedophilia and child trafficking and child torture which those of us engaged in this type of research have known has been going on forever and is an inherent part of the elite ruling class and the way they go about their business. Are we at a point where this information, these revelations, are about to break surface? Are things going to get to the point where you can no longer get the lid back on it, and awareness of these subjects is only going to grow exponentially to the point that eventually it's going to bleed through into the mainstream and everyone is going to have to face up to the devastating reality that this has been going on? If we look at headlines of the past few weeks and months, we see unending reports of various paedophiles, various grooming gangs, various child trafficking rings that have been rounded up, people that have been arrested. It's all been low-level names. It's not household names. It's not politicians. It's not famous people that we all know yet. That's not to say it's not to come. But the figures involved and the scale of it, it's literally worldwide, indicates that something is starting to happen. And this brings us on to the absolutely horrific and devastating subject matter of adrenochrome extraction. Again, most people in this room are probably already somewhat familiar with it, but for anyone that isn't, adrenochrome is a chemical compound which is secreted in the human body into the blood through the adrenal glands, and it's produced at a time of extreme trauma and extreme when an individual is literally at a point of life or death. It's particularly potent in children, and it's produced by a child's body at a moment where the child feels that it is about to die, and it's produced to try and keep the child alive. There is this absolutely unbelievably horrific practice which has been exposed in alternative realms for the past several years, whereby the rich and famous, many household names that you have heard of, many politicians, many famous celebrities, are alleged to be involved in rituals where children who are kept in underground tunnels and underground bases far away from view and are bred specifically for the purpose, are involved in these rituals where they are tortured and they are killed, and the adrenochrome is extracted from them at the moment of death. And this is said to be the most valuable substance that can be traded on Earth. It's said to be more addictive than any other drug, and it's said that many famous people are reliant on consuming adrenochrome within children's blood, and they take it because it gives them an incredible high, and it has life-giving properties which help to preserve them, keep them young, and like I say, it becomes addictive, and it just becomes something they can't live without. So we've heard many accounts from many different sources of the fact that this is a worldwide network, and children are bred specifically for this purpose, and that's what many of these deep underground military bases and these tunnel systems are all about. They're said to be below most majorly populated cities all over the world, and it's been going on forever. And a big part of what we're hearing about the Q plan is that various military groups that are working in conjunction with this operation have been going into these underground tunnel systems, these underground bases, and clearing them out, rescuing many of these children, and evidently destroying the tunnel systems. These are the reports we're getting. There is very little by way of documentary evidence or proof to confirm that this has been going on. So a certain amount of faith is required if you're going to accept that that's been happening. But that's not to say this information will not come to light in the fullness of time. So it's said that many celebrities are into this as a way of life, and many of them have been placed under house arrest, we're told, over these past several months. Certainly, there are photographs and there's video footage of many famous people who appear to be wearing ankle bracelets on their right leg. And this is indicative of them having been placed under house arrest, and it's a military-style operation it does take some explaining away as to why all these celebrities do appear with these ankle bracelets on. The story is that they have been placed under arrest pending military tribunal trial, and that a roundup has begun of many of the worst offenders in this. And many of them are household names. They are famous people that we've heard of. Tom Hanks's name comes up time and time again in all of this. There's lots of symbolism connected to the idea of adrenochrome extraction. I did a podcast on it last week with a guy called Isaac Weishaupt, not his real name, of IlluminatiWatcher.com. And we were talking about how for many years we've seen symbolism in movies and music videos and such pertaining to trauma-based mind control and satanic ritual abuse. But there's a whole load of symbology, icons, motifs, directly connected to adrenochrome, which, when you know what you're looking for, you realise have been right there in movies, TV shows, music videos for decades, you know, going all the way back. One of them involves depictions of white rabbits. It's a symbolic thing. The chemical constituent makeup of adrenochrome is said to resemble a white rabbit somewhat in this form. So, yeah, when you see depictions of white rabbits in movies and all these popular culture vehicles, many researchers will tell you that it's a coded reference to adrenochrome. There is a video on YouTube that lasts just over an hour, which is a compilation of clips from various films that feature references to white rabbits. Also, fried fish is another one, and fish generally. And there are various other renditions of the adrenochrome idea as well. But the white rabbit, that leads us to Follow the White Rabbit, which is a slogan connected to the Q plan. And the white rabbit makes us think of Alice in Wonderland, the stories of Lewis Carroll, which themselves are connected with trauma-based mind control programming. So there's symbolism abounds, and I'm kind of in training myself to recognize these references to adrenochrome, which appear to have been put in movies over the years. So it's been right there in plain sight, it's been right under our noses, but until you know what you're looking for, you're going to miss it. It's going to have that subliminal effect on you. As they see it, they're placing the truth in plain sight. They're giving you an opportunity to know what they're doing, but they know that the vast majority of people will have no idea what it really means until now. What I've got here is an incredible thing. The other week, Turkish national mainstream TV, so the Turkish equivalent of the BBC, carried a news report on adrenochrome extraction and its use by celebrities and politicians, famous names. What the people of Turkey made of this, I have no idea. Can you imagine the effect of a report like this appearing on the BBC? This country would be completely different the following morning. People will be talking about nothing else. Of course, it will never make the screens of the BBC or any other mainstream outlet here, but for some reason, it slipped through the net in Turkey. It was also picked up on by Bulgarian TV, and it made Austrian TV as well. I was kind of hoping it was going to go somewhere and get picked up by other nations. It seems to have fizzled out. But either way, it remains incredible that this was screened on mainstream TV. So here's a couple of extracts from this Turkish TV news report. It's got English voiceovers, so take a listen to this.
Skin that came from a young person far, far away, and they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby.
How innocent they tell it, don't they? As if it was something entirely unimportant. And Ellen intervened at the same time. What is it? Skin fragments injected under the facial skin by Korean children to keep them young and beautiful? Oh God, oh God. You've never heard of it? You know they look us in the eye and they'll lie to us. We sat down and researched the subject today. We were ashamed of our humanity when we were confronted with the issue. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to give you the name adrenochrome. What is it? It is a hormone that is produced in the endocrine glands of children during extraordinary stressful situations caused by fear or pain. We can say it is the root of adrenaline. Okay, the children can create a resistance thanks to this hormone, and the child gains new strength. it gains strength, and exactly this hormone is extracted. $1,000 a dose, and they sell it for $1,000 to various celebrities. It might seem like there's nothing wrong with it, but you should not forget that children are put into anxiety states. When children are hurt, the body releases this hormone. To extract this, they harm the children. Ladies and gentlemen, you see adrenochrome, a natural human secretion.
Ellen DeGenerate is a name who comes up all the time in adrenochrome research as well. She's one of the celebrities that is apparently under house arrest with one of these ankle bracelets on. All sorts of stories recently about her show being cancelled and she's not going to do her show anymore. Yeah, well, there's a very good reason for that, seemingly. There's another part to this as well. Oh, and Ellen DeGenerate just turns out to be a cousin of Madonna and Lady Gaga, but it's just one of those coincidences and nothing to worry about.
Johnny Depp. A photo taken 39 years of age. Please zoom in on it. Today he's 51 years old. As if he never aged, right? Kate Moss. A famous model by 30 years. At 41, my God, they don't get older. They take good care of themselves. And Brad Pitt, the most handsome man in the world at 42 and 51. Hasn't changed at all, has he? Tom Cruise, Meryl Streep, all like that. I suppose they always use this. Next, how do we know that a celebrity is using it? I suppose, from time to time, blue marks appear around the eyes. Here, the blue eyes of celebrities who sometimes appear in front of the camera who use this adrenaline, the hormone, the medicine. Iron Man is in. Ben Affleck is in. George Bush is in. Here, the former foreign secretary, the King of England. Here, the Pope. Even he used it. In all of them, you'll see blue marks from time to time on some stock photo. It's a side effect.
Look how they're naming names there, putting it right out there. And this ties into the so-called Black Eye Club, all these celebrities and famous people that we've seen with inexplicable black eyes. Prince Philip all the time. How many times have you seen him pictured with a black eye? Maybe we're starting to find out where all that comes from. This was reportedly a book which was put out there by Sean P. Diddy Combs, otherwise known as Puff Daddy, the hip-hop producer from back in the 90s. And he put out seemingly this book called The Adrenochrome Witch. Well, this appears to have been a hoax. It was retailing on Amazon for $100, and there was really nothing to it. So it appears to have been some sort of scam that was put out there. But it's interesting timing that it dropped when it did, when there was awareness starting to build of the whole idea of adrenochrome. And I really do wonder whether things have gone so far with this now that it's not going to be able to be put back in the bag. And awareness and knowledge of this whole subject area is only going to grow from this point forward. In terms of rubbing our noses in it, putting it right under our faces, the title of Lady Gaga's album, which was released in spring of this year, it was reportedly delayed by the whole coronavirus situation, but she eventually put the album out, and it just happens to be called Chromatica, which would appear to be a sly, knowing nod to the idea of adrenochrome. And here's the front cover of that album. Lady Gaga, of course, a key player in all this, connected into it by blood, literally, and in a position to know all about it. Also, it's worth factoring in that one of the most popular internet browsers of the past several years, Google's Chrome, comes a few years after Google also had a software product which went out there by the name of Adreno. So through the company Google, we've had both Adreno and Chrome put out there as products in the past few years. Who is going to claim that is coincidence and it's innocent and there's nothing to it? Similarly, Joe Biden who's still being put out there as the opposing candidate to Donald Trump for this November's election. I mean, there's evidence, first of all, that the man has dementia. He can't complete most of his sentences, and he seems to forget what city he's in at any given time. He also seems to be very fond of touching up young kids. He can't seem to keep his hands off children at his rallies. And here's a tweet that he put out a while back to his good friend Barack Obama. Happy 55th, Barack. But look at the imagery in what was included in this tweet. As well as all this innocent sort of looking stuff over on the left, you have a slice of pizza over on the right, which ties into the whole Pizzagate research area. That subject came out in 2016 at the time of the last US presidential elections, and that indicated paedophile and child trafficking and child torturing and child murdering networks which existed within the American political system and beyond. And this group used food-related symbolism and imagery in their communications. And this was picked up on by the NSA, who intercepted many of the communications, and this was what the Hillary Clinton emails and the Podesta emails were all about at that time, where they were making references to chickens, pasta, hot dogs, and pizza. And all of these are terms that are used for young children that are trafficked for sexual abuse and worse. And here's Joe Biden putting it right out there with a pizza image in one of his tweets. This is a restaurant in Los Angeles which really exists. It has a website. This is an extract from it. You can go there and look at it. It's called the Cannibal Club, and they openly speak of serving human meat. They very proudly crow about it on their website. They talk about how succulent it is and how nutritious it is and all of this. And they are openly telling you that you can come to this restaurant and you can eat human meat. Here's the VIP list from last November, and the names of their visitors include Katy Perry, Chelsea Clinton, Anderson Cooper, and Meryl Streep. So it's all starting to come to the surface, if you're paying attention, that is, if you're looking over here and not over here, with adrenochrome, cannibalism, and all kinds of other horrific activity which would appear to have been going on in the upper echelons of society with very famous people involved for a very long time. And it appears to be just on the edge of breaking the surface into public awareness. And I'll finish off with this. This is a still from Katy Perry's music video for the song Bon Appetit that she put out a few years ago. Katy Perry, a patron of the Cannibal Club in LA. And in this video, she was depicted being prepared by chefs to be eaten. She's being boiled in fat, and she's being rolled in flour, and she's having fruit put all around her, and she's laid out on a table ready to be eaten. Lovely family-friendly stuff, I'm sure you'd agree. I'm reminded of this comment that came out many years ago from Mel Gibson. Whatever people may think of him, it does become interesting that Mel Gibson's career seemed to tank a few years ago, and nobody seems to want to hire him for their movies anymore. I wonder why. Could it be something to do with this comment that he made, a very rare voice to come out with this from the inside, where he stated, "Hollywood is an institutionalized paedophile ring. It is a den of parasites who feast on the blood of children. Every studio in Hollywood is bought and paid for with the blood of innocent children." So these past weeks and months, I've probably been the same as many of you, and I've said as much in the videos that I put out each week. I've been very open about it, and I've stated that I've been through pretty much every human emotion that it's possible to go through in every psychological state. I've had days where I've been so utterly, deeply depressed at what's going on in the world that it's been a gamble as to whether I would still be around the following morning. But I've also had days where I've been high on hope and optimism and positivity. at the potential that still lies ahead for how things may pan out. A Beyoncé lyric comes into my mind from her song Sweet Dreams, where she said this could be a sweet dream or a beautiful nightmare. And I veer from those two extremes all the time, from what feels like my worst nightmare to what could be a wonderful dream. So I think we are poised on the cusp of any number of things happening. The tyranny that we see all around us appears to be getting stepped up by the day. The New World Order master plan appears to be taking form, ever more so. But then we hear of stuff that is said to be happening out of the Q camp. We hear of attempts to round up and bring to justice and hold to account paedophiles and various other criminals. And we have subjects like adrenochrome and cannibalism and all this other horrific stuff, which is starting to break the surface. And if it could continue to be steered in the right direction, and if enough people keep their efforts up in those circles, the potential is there for these subjects to finally break through to mainstream public consciousness to the point that people can no longer ignore them. They can no longer pretend it's not happening. All of this stuff has been happening while everybody else has been obsessing about masks and social distancing and viruses. I find it very interesting that this has been an incredibly active year, and not just because of the coronavirus. All this other stuff has been happening. And quite potentially, if 2020 has been a trip and a hell of a ride, then 2021 could be even more so, depending on how things pan out from here. So, finishing on this quote, my best dreams and my worst nightmares have the same people in them. Things could still go either way, and I leave you with those possibilities and those thoughts. I'll finish off by just getting in a shameless plug for my books. So for anyone who's not familiar with my earlier work exposing the machinations of the corporate music industry, I've got volumes 1 and 2 of Musical Truth. Copies are available at the desk over there, got some over here. Also my allegorical novel, The Cause and the Cure, which I dropped a few months ago, is available as well. And I have the I Do Not Consent t-shirts. T-shirts for all occasions, great conversation starters in these times. 4 sizes of these available. If anyone wants to cop one down the front, there you go. Modelled very nicely. No, XL. And that having been said, I just have to leave you with this. Bill and Melinda, or as I like to call them, Bal and Belinda. Good night.